celebrate a special moment and to turn off our phones. To celebrate a special moment and to hear the perspective of some of the special people who made it happen. And I'd like to kick things off this morning. You're going to hear from many of your colleagues who helped to secure the Brown property and are working on a broader landscape to protect the highlands. But before you hear from them and hear their perspectives, I'd like to share with you just a brief perspective from the Trust for Public Lands national view about the connections that this place represents. All of you know that the Wildcat Ridge itself is a story of communion of energy, people who work together to make this happen, and we're going to hear from some of those folks today who also worked on the Brown property. But the Brown property itself is a connection, it's a watershed connection between Wildcat Ridge and Beaver Brook. It's a habitat connection, but it's also very much a connection between people, a connection of people's energies. And again, you're going to hear this morning from some of the groups, some of the individuals who, without any of whom, the puzzle pieces would have all come apart. We do work around the country, and that is my job. And I am dispatched off into places that are a lot less spectacular than what you see behind me. But in all of that effort, I can absolutely tell you that what occurs in New Jersey is just plain different. The number of partners who came together to protect the Brown property is, I would say, almost unprecedented. The commitment of the state, of Governor Whitman and Bob Shin, and of the voters of New Jersey to put together the people of the Highlands, to put together funding sources, to put together the kind of energy and the kind of deals that it takes on the ground to protect pieces of land. You know, around the country, every hour, during the time that we spend together, for instance, about 400 acres of open space vanishes. And you all have responded to that challenge in a very different way from anyone else. And so I'm here as much as anything to express my gratitude from afar for what you do right here. And also to introduce you to some of the partners who helped make it happen right here. And we're going to start this morning with an appropriate welcome from some of the local folks in a local philanthropic state-federal partnership that protected the Brown property and are working to protect the Highlands. And so you will hear immediately after me from David Epstein, who many of you know and whose work with the Morris Land Conservancy and with the State Trust has been so meaningful right here, from Mayor Inglesino, who has been so wonderful in his commitment to this area, from the freeholders in the person of Doug Cabana. And the joy will keep on mounting from there. But without any further ado, I want to turn the mic over to someone who is intimately familiar with this spot because he helped to protect it so we could stand on it today. Friends, please welcome David Epstein.
Good morning and welcome to Wildcat Ridge Hawkwatch. It was almost a year ago today that we gathered here to celebrate the preservation of the Hawkwatch in a partnership between Morris Land Conservancy, the New Jersey Green Acres Program, and American Tower Corporation. And at that celebration, we all agreed to redouble our efforts to protect the Brown property, which lies below us. And the Brown property, of course, is a very important part of the miracle of migration that we witness here each year as thousands and thousands of hawks fly by and eagles in the spring and the fall. And the Brown property, of course, is also important because it's a watershed. It provides clean drinking water for Rockaway Township and for millions of other northern New Jersey residents in an interconnected system of drinking water supply. But part of this partnership was really born 10 years ago through the visionary actions of people like Helen Fensky and Peter Prawl, Diane Nelson, and many, many others who saw the Morris County landscape as a connected landscape here in the Highlands, and they called it the Farney Highlands. And they put together a plan that Green Acres has adopted. And today, about 10 years later, about 2/3 of the Farney Highlands is now protected. So as we celebrate the protection of the Brown property, and Morris Land Conservancy is very proud to have been part of protecting the Brown property, we should also redouble our efforts and our focus on protecting the third of the Farney Highlands that isn't protected yet, the third that still can be developed and should be part of our public park and open space system. So I thank you all for being here, and I want to introduce next a person without whose help we probably wouldn't be here today. About the early part of 1994, the Green Acres program had reached an agreement to buy Hawkwatch Ridge, which is a 2,500-acre piece of property that surrounds us today. When the word of that got out, the Rockaway Township Mayor and Council passed a unanimous resolution opposing the acquisition of that property because they said that it would raise taxes for everybody here in town. And Morris Land Conservancy put a study together, and we showed that preserving the property would actually save taxpayers money, that developing this property into 3 golf courses and hundreds of homes would in fact raise people's taxes. John Inglesino was a councilman at that time, and he had the courage to read that report and to change his vote. He not only changed his vote, but he convinced a number of his colleagues to change their votes, and Rockaway Township ended up supporting the acquisition of Hawkwatch Ridge, and today it's the Wildcat Ridge Wildlife Management Area. And John has been a great friend of conservation here in Rockaway Township ever since, and I want to welcome our good friend, Rockaway Township Mayor John Inglesino.
Thank you, David, and let me also thank you for being a great friend to Rockaway Township and all of your efforts in helping us to preserve open space. I want to thank the Trust for Public Land for putting this event together today, and especially recognize Alan Front and Terrence Nolan for their efforts. I also wanted to make a couple of recognitions of some dignitaries who are here today. First, from the Rockaway Township Council, we have Councilman Gene Scheniger. Gene, thanks for being here. Gene represents the 6th Ward, this area of town. Also, Councilman Les Wexler is here today. Les, nice to see you. And Councilman Paul Menina is here today with his son, Ken. We're also honored to have the Mayor of Mendham Township, Kathy Porter, here today as well. And Mayor Jay Delaney from Morristown is also a trustee, I understand, for TPL. And of course, from the Morris County Freeholder Board, who's been supportive of this project, Freeholder Jack Schreier. Freeholder Margaret Nordstrom. And I see we're now joined by Freeholder Director Doug Cabana. From the Rockaway Township Open Space Committee, our chairman, David Oakes, is here. David, thank you for being here. And I also want to recognize Peter Prawl, who's here as well. Peter, a lot of what we're doing today, Peter is one of the original founders of the open space movement here in Rockaway Township years and years ago, before open space came in vogue. And Peter was instrumental in raising a public consciousness about the importance of preserving open space. And Peter, we're glad to have you here. And also our Congressman Rodney Freelandheisen is here today, who we'll be hearing from, but I did want to make special mention of Rodney. And Commissioner Shin and members of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, I want to welcome you here to Rockaway Township as well. Today we celebrate an important victory in our quest to preserve open space and protect our natural resources, especially our drinking water. And when I campaigned for mayor in Rockaway Township way back in 1995, I made a commitment to the people of this town to preserve valuable tracts of open space. As a then councilman, as David Epstein alluded to before, I was proud to support the preservation of the Hawkwatch Ridge Mountain, and I want to publicly thank Commissioner Shin for his support of that project as well. In 1996, the council and I created the first open space trust fund in the history of Rockaway Township. And I also appointed David Oakes to chair our open space committee. The committee's mission was to create an open space master plan, and the committee worked extremely hard in this endeavor. They visited virtually every tract of open space in this 45 square mile municipality, and they prioritized each parcel. Rockaway Township was the second municipality in Morris County to adopt an open space master plan. And recently, the township was the recipient of an achievement award from the New Jersey planning officials for our open space master plan. And this 295-acre tract behind me was our #1 priority for preservation. This site was approved for 108 housing units, and it sits on the basin of the Beaver Brook Aquifer, which provides drinking water to thousands of Rockaway Township residents. We had the daunting task of raising the necessary funds to purchase this property. We turned to David Epstein of Morris Land Conservancy, who brought Trust for Public Land to the table. TPL procured over $1 million towards this transaction. And I want to also thank the Victoria Foundation and the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation for their generous financial contribution to this worthy acquisition. But through our collaborative efforts, Governor Whitman visited this site last summer, and she appropriately called it priceless. And at that moment, I knew we had a very strong financial partner in the state of New Jersey. And I want to thank Governor Whitman for her leadership in open space preservation and her commitment to this open space project. We could not have done it without her. I also want to recognize the efforts of our Senate President, Don DeFrancesco, who was scheduled to be here but unfortunately called and is not able to be here due to an emergency. Don has certainly been a leader in open space preservation as well. I also want to recognize Rodney Freelandheisen in his efforts to procure $500,000 from Forest Legacy towards the acquisition of this project. Rockaway Township raised $2.5 million towards this project. $500,000 came from our Open Space Trust Fund, and $1 million from a Green Acres planning incentive granted to Rockaway Township. We also appealed to the Morris County Open Space Trust for financial assistance. Members of the Morris County Open Space Trust visited this site personally. They thoroughly considered our application and wisely appropriated $1 million towards it, which is the Trust's largest appropriation towards any project in Morris County. The county funds were made payable to Rockaway Township, and I want to thank each and every member of the Morris County Open Space Trust Fund who voted to appropriate that money, as well as to thank the freeholders for their support. I think they deserve a round of applause as well. At this time, I want to introduce the Director of the Morris County Board of Freeholders, Doug Cabana. Doug? Let me also recognize freeholder Sissy Lauries, who's here as well.
Thank you, Mayor. And we're come bearing gifts, which is what we like to do, especially with the Morris County Open Space Trust Fund. And this year, we are very proud to contribute to this project in the amount of $1 million. That's a good hunk of the $7 million that this project is worth, and certainly worth the 295 acres worth preserving. This is beautiful country up here, and it's really what we all look to, Morris County, to preserve the natural resources that we are so blessed with here in the county. So on behalf of my colleagues of the Freeholder Board, I'd like to present to Mayor Inglesino a check to the Township of Rockaway for $1 million.
In front.
All right. Susan, get up here.
Check, a lot of zeros.
Yeah, there's a lot of zeros. That's the largest check I've ever signed, yeah.
You haven't been in Rockaway?
No.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks for your support. Oh, I guess we'll take it.
Thank you, Doug.
We'll leave it in the front here.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, my name is Terrence Nolan. I'm a project manager for the Trust for Public Land in the Highlands. I get the pleasure to continue to introduce folks. You know, it took this many people to close this project, so you got to thank folks. And you have to take a moment once in a while to look back at what you've done and say, this is great, and we got to do more of it. Last August, when we began a race to protect the view you now see, when TPL entered into an option agreement to acquire the nearly 300 acres below us, we knew that we need a lot of help, and we knew that time was short. But everybody stepped up. And of course, I think the first thanks to Mayor Inglesino, who has been just consistently supportive of this project of open space in Rockaway Township generally. Thanks to him. And let me just say that your open space program is in good hands with General David Oakes, who in the background with his sage advice. It was a pleasure to work with you. And Joe Fiorilla, who is out there somewhere, logistics king. There he is. Joe, I think we deserve a hand. 3 months ago, Joe and I were in the trenches talking on the phone just about every day, and I'm sure you don't miss those phone calls, Joe. But thank you very much. I'd also like to thank David Epstein. Where are you, David? I mean, not only for participating and for protecting this ridge top, but for also contributing a $500,000 Green Acres grant to the acquisition of this project below us. Peter Prawl also deserves some thanks. One of the first people to call for the protection of this property some 10 years ago, and who first introduced the Trust for Public Land to this project through meetings with Rockaway and Morris Land Conservancy. Well, you'll be hearing a refrain today, a call to those who care about the land to come together in partnership in the name of land conservation. You know, with the rapid pace of development and expansion, one wonders what the state of New Jersey will look like 100 years from now. And we hope that by partnering together, the answer will be in a string of protected tracts like this one. One of the really key pieces to this transaction was the private foundation dollars that came through, the overwhelming commitments from both the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation and the Victoria Foundation. And I have to praise both foundations for their vision, because at different times we took representatives up here, Nancy Zimmerman from Victoria and Eric. I think in each case it was either rainy or freezing cold. There were no foliage on the trees, but they each saw, hey, you got to protect this. The Doris Duke Foundation, you may have read, recently gave an $8 million grant to the Trust for Public Land and the Nature Conservancy to split. This project represents the first installment from that grant. And I'd like to take the opportunity now to thank them and to introduce Eric Holtz, Program Director for the Environment for the Trust for the Doris Duke Foundation.
Thanks, it's great to be here. It's a lot warmer today than when I was here last. It was, I think, 20 below zero in November. And the vista is slightly different. I recommend you all come back in the winter when the leaves are off the trees. I'm pleased to be here representing the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation. For those of you who don't know us, the foundation was formed 4 or 5 years ago with the estate of Doris Duke, who was a New Jersey resident and a person who really loved the outdoors, open space, and flora and fauna. I work in the environment program. The mission of that program is to conserve flora and fauna in the United States. And we created a program last fall called the Metropolitan Conservation Initiative, and its goal was to preserve important habitat for flora and fauna in urbanizing or suburban areas. And this program is really designed with the recognition that flora and fauna don't only reside in the tropics or in South Florida, but in places like New Jersey, within eyeshot of New York City. There really are important places that are worthy of protection. So there were really two goals here. One was to protect habitat, and the other was to encourage the kind of partnerships that you see here today. And we're really pleased with the way that this has come about. And I just want to say in closing that the program was established in New Jersey to protect area habitat in the highlands and also in the Pine Barrens in the south. It was an $8 million grant to the Trust for Public Land and the Nature Conservancy, and this is the first project that utilized funds from that. So there's a lot of money left. So I'll just say stay tuned. I think Terrence and his partners at TPL are going to come up with a lot of good projects. So thank you.
The other key partner, private partner in this, the Victoria Foundation, has been part of open space acquisition in the Highlands for years, contributing to Sterling Forest and other critical pieces in the Highlands. And I know that Nancy Zimmerman, Program Director, cared so much about this piece and told me several times as we worked to close this. And we just want to express our thanks to the Victoria Foundation for having been there time and time again. And I'd like to introduce the Executive Director of the Victoria Foundation, Catherine McFarland.
Good morning. It's true, Nancy really has pushed for the preservation of this and many other pieces of property in the Highlands, and you can see why. It is indeed very gratifying to be here again to celebrate an important land acquisition which adds 295 acres of natural lands to the Wildcat Ridge Wildlife Management Area, connecting it with Beaver Brook. These lands will not only protect the quality of our drinking water, but they will provide the habitat or flyway for an important list of species. We're really pleased to join with Trust for Public Land, Morris County, the Garden State Preservation Trust, and the State of New Jersey Green Acres Program to make the acquisition happen. I've been asked to talk a little bit about Victoria's land acquisition grants. Victoria, since the 1970s, has been helping conservation efforts statewide. In 1985, the Foundation trustees, recognizing a window of opportunity for land acquisition, that window was closing. As sprawl, we were having a third layer of edge cities being developed in the Farney Highlands and in other areas of New Jersey, and something had to be done while we were disinvesting in our cities. So they established a land acquisition fund that is given yearly and is designed to provide the last monies needed towards projects, especially Green Acres matching funds. The foundation has made 6 land acquisition funds since then. They have included the Hosford Easement, Pochunk Mountain, Russia Brook, White Lake, and Sparta Mountain. In addition, they have committed 2 major grants, $1 million to the Trust for Public Land towards the purchase of Sterling Forest, and $1 million to the Nature Conservancy's Land Acquisition Capital Campaign. We are indeed delighted at the attention that is coming to New Jersey and to the conservation of our natural lands, and I applaud all of you who are working so hard to preserve them. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure now to introduce the big partner in this. We have 2 representatives from the state of New Jersey, 2 distinguished representatives. And I think I'd first like to introduce the Director of New Jersey Fish and Wildlife, Bob McDowell, to say that we can all be comforted this is now going into your hands to steward this piece of property. And I feel good about that. Bob Dowell, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's not good to be on before your boss, but just let me thank everybody who has contributed to this effort. The Wildcat Ridge Wildlife Management Areas now composes nearly 4,000 acres, or headed that direction. It certainly is interesting that it's right here within 50 miles of New York City and will stand as an example of good land stewardship. And between myself and Bob Shin, we certainly will make sure that happens. I just would like to turn the clock back a minute. Back in the 1930s, there was a professor of agriculture and forestry at the University of Wisconsin. He wrote definitive text on the science of wildlife management, probably the first text. And he also wrote a book called Sand County Almanac. His name was Aldo Leopold. And if you don't, you should go back and read that, because the links between the land, our wealth, and our environmental health are clearly defined in those books. And if you're going to take care of wildlife, you got to take care of the land. If you're going to take care of the land, you're going to take care of the water. And the water is very important to all of us. If you look at New Jersey's system of wildlife management areas, you'll suddenly find out that Black River, Flatbrook, those were tracts bought early in the Green Acres program. The Flatbrook was bought in the early 1930s. And their names reflect how this system has evolved. It evolved around watersheds. And that's not a big mistake. If you look down south, most of our wildlife management areas are based upon estuaries or tributaries to major wetlands and the coastal ecosystem. So what you do here on the land makes a difference downstream, and it makes a difference to the health of even the ocean environment. So if you care about fish and wildlife, you care about places like this. It's not just the vista for the sea, it's the vista for the future. And with you folks as partners, we'll be able to get it done. New Jersey will be unique in the country, with now 8 million people on 4.9 million acres, and our wildlife resources are still very healthy. I'm committed to make sure that continues, and I hope you will too. Thank you very much.
Well, 10 months ago, we had a meeting in Trenton with some folks from the Green Acres program. Dennis Davidson, and Gary Rice, and Lisa Lubo, and Margaret Waldock we talked to. And it was clear what the goal was, and it was clear it was going to be expensive, and it was clear also we didn't have much time. But I have to say that the governor's goal is well underway, because what we're seeing is action from the Green Acres program, and just an incredible, just quick time period coming through. So I think I'd like to show our thanks to Robert Shin, representative here from the Department of Environmental Protection, Commissioner. Welcome, Robert Shin.
Thank you very much. This is a great day, and when people ask me, you know, what sticks in your mind as the best things that have been accomplished by the department, two stick out in my mind, and they're linkages and partnerships. And that not only goes for open space, but it goes for environmental management. It goes to how we interrelate with regulated communities. But I don't think there's a better example of linkages and partnerships than what you see around this ridge today. Clearly, when projects like this came up a few short years ago, once you get development approvals, it's sort of fait accompli. It just is off the screen. That's no longer the case, and this is a great example of it. There are lands that are just reach out to be protected, and this is one of those types of pieces of land. Sole source aquifer. There's no second source of drinking water. It's absolutely critical to water supply for Rockaway. There are $1 million coming from the local municipality. I don't know how many people understand how significant that contribution is. That is a major commitment, and I can't say enough to the mayor and local officials for coming together with that kind of support. The different trusts, the Marsh Land Conservancy and the Trust for Public Land, getting in partnership, not in competition for who's got the most acreage, but in partnership to get something done. This is just a great collaboration. I can't help but mention one individual, maybe a couple, but start with one. Frank Parker's been retiring since I left the Pinelands Commission in 1985. I forget what date you retired. You almost did it a couple times, but he just had to take it easy, and I'm going to give you a target for retirement, Frank. When DEP finishes its open space goals with all its partners, we'll check with you then. If you're ready then and you're old enough, we'll take that into consideration. Meanwhile, you know, keep up all the good work you do. The other partner that is very significant, and not only in this project, but in open space acquisition overall, and he represents us in the federal government as a congressman, and I served in the legislature with him for about 8.5 years, I think, or so. And the kind of individual Rodney was in the legislature, he had a lot of credibility. He was tenacious, and those are the two ingredients to get things done in government. And when he went to Congress, I told him how much we missed the Land and Water Conservation Fund and how important that was to New Jersey. Well, this tenacious, never-ending proponent of partnering with New Jersey has kept that work up, and I know he'll keep that work up. And he's just done a great job without a lot of fanfare, and I know you've got a lot of partners on your side. But I'd like to thank Rodney for his ongoing support in making this happen as well. He's been a big player. I just, again, want to thank all the partners that played a significant role. There are more than 30,000 acres since the Whitman administration initiated the project in the Highlands. And, you know, 1,000 acres here and 1,000 acres there, and you're talking about real contiguous land area. And as Bob McDowell said, these linkages are showing up, and I'm sure there's a GIS map floating around here somewhere, but you start to see the corridors and the linkages and the reasons we're preserving land around reservoirs and the reasons we're focusing on things like the Forney Highlands. So all I can say is good partnerships breed better partnerships, and I think this is really off on the right foot. And I thank you on behalf of the governor and the department, and the partnership just couldn't be better. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, very much. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce to you one of those other big partners, the federal partner in this multifaceted, many-tentacled octopus of protection. And that federal partnership could be represented by no one better than your representative, Congressman Rodney Frelinghuysen. Before I give you the microphone, and I will not be long, but I just have to tell you all that Rodney's effectiveness here should be, in some ways, a surprise and not a surprise. Money in Washington is hen's teeth, but it comes here, and that is a facet of something bigger that Rodney does. Bob McDowell mentioned Aldo Leopold, who said, "Think globally, act locally." Well, Rodney, in his support of legislation to increase these funding sources, the Forest Legacy Program and the state side of the Land and Water Fund, continuing his commitment to federal areas, is doing around the country in a more general way what he does right here. And you all could not be luckier to have him as your congressman. We couldn't be luckier to have him with us today and have his commitment to the Highlands.
Great, thanks.
Rodney.
Great.
Now, I stand between you and adjournment, so I'll try to keep it brief. I knew the day was going to start well when I passed Frank Parker on the trail and overpassed you. And you wearing a tie this time, and I'm not wearing one. And to Commissioner Bob Shin, yes, we did serve in the state legislature, and I appreciate his leadership and guidance. I've never said this publicly, but the Morris Sussex home builders were very happy to send me to Washington because I never voted for them when I served in the state legislature. But that's not to say that I'm against home building, but I certainly am very pro open space. Let me be a little bit repetitive in acknowledging the leadership of Mayor Anglesino and the Township Council. It takes political courage and leadership sometimes to get things done, and John has been a leader in that regard. This is a steep learning curve for all of us, even if we've been in public life for a long time. But we know that the vast majority of the people we represent support the preservation of open space. And this incredible site, if we could even bring up a small fraction of New Jersey, would convince those that are perhaps out in the wilderness sort of forgetting how incredibly beautiful this is. To David Brown, who's not here, who's somewhat mysterious, we thank him for being a conservation-minded owner. Alan Front and the Trust for Public Land. I can't tell you how many times Alan was in my office in a variety of different ways, but particularly on efforts to add acreage on to Morristown National Historic Park. He's a true leader, and the men and women who work with him work very hard. Let me also thank the leadership of Doug Cabana and the Board of Chosen Freeholders. Having been a freeholder once in an earlier political life, there too you have a group of men and women who are leaders whose work and check today is a representation of that, but also their leadership and support of the Morris County Park Commission. No one should take that for granted, but we have a freeholder board that is incredibly enlightened, and I believe reflects the views of most of the constituents. And to the Victoria Foundation and to the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, what an incredible partnership you make of this particular project. And yes, to the governor. In this life, it is important to have a vision. It's important to have some goals. And when she set forth a goal of 1 million acres, I think that was important. And we need to help her achieve that goal, and today we're moving towards that. In all actuality, the federal participation in this project is one of the smallest, but I suppose in some ways it's symbolic. To correct the record, the federal government support of this project was only a paltry $350,000. But to my mind, it's a good start, and it's something that we need to build on. Alan had wanted me to comment a little bit about the Forest Legacy Program, and yes, about the CARA Act. As many of you know, the Forest Legacy Program was originally designed for the eastern part of the United States, but in recent years has been expanded to include other states across the country. And yes, every year in Congress, there's a fight for the Forest Legacy Program. Usually people opposed to it, but for those of us who serve on the Appropriations Committee, who feel the Forest Legacy Program is an important, we need to forget that the fact that the President has held this program close to his bosom and realize that these areas are important to preserve, and there's credit to Republicans and Democrats who stepped forward to do it. So even though in the first instance the Forest Legacy Program has been shortchanged, I think in the final analysis we'll get more funding. I was very honored to sponsor what's known as CARA, the Conservation and Reinvestment Act. That is landmark environmental legislation passed by the House in May that would make the Forest Legacy Program and the Land and Water Conservation Fund a permanent part of the federal budget each and every year. Making the Land and Water Conservation Fund permanent would amount to $900 million annually for preserving our nation's undeveloped land, $450 million of which would go toward preserving federal land, in some cases existing parks that would and could and should be expanded. And most importantly, for our purposes here today, $450 million would be available for the states to decide which land they want to purchase. And all of us have a stake in these types of purchases. And that's why there are so many stakeholders here today from every conceivable group, and most particularly those that are well t-shirted that represent the Morris Land Conservancy. Thank you for the special work that you do by being a constant advertisement. And as you can say, I walked ahead of you on the trail just so the program wouldn't get started too late. The CARA bill is not a done deal yet. While we've passed the bill in May, the Senate is still debating the bill in committee. In fact, as fate would have it, the two main players in this bill have been from Alaska, God forbid. But I give credit to Congressman Don Young for his participation in the House version. But Alaska Senator Frank Murkowski only began the markup of his bill last Thursday. He's the chairman of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. While Senator Murkowski has some opposition in committee, it looks like he'll have enough support to move the bill out of committee. We need to keep the fight going, to keep the pressure on the U.S. Senate to make sure this bill gets to the floor, is passed and put on the president's desk before we go home. The bottom line is that if this bill becomes law, every year there will be ample resources available across the country to save open space. With your support, with the broad base we have here today, that is entirely possible. Let me reiterate what others have said. Thank you for being here, for your support, for your generosity and leadership, both public and private. Without you, this could not have been done. Thank you very much.
We need to detain you for just a minute. Thank you, Rodney. And we're not going to let you off the hook quite yet. There are two more items of business. One of them is that this special viewscape, unfortunately, is not available to folks in Washington. And so, Rodney, we wanted to give you a piece of the Highlands for your wall.
Oh my God. Isn't that nice? Fantastic.
And we want to thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. We also would like to ask all of our speakers to come on up here for a memorial group picture. And we do have some lovely parting gifts for other folks who participated in this as well. So please, speakers, come on up, and to the rest of you and to all of you here in Morris County, thank you for everything you're doing for the Highlands, and keep up the good work. Thank you.